Welcome to the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast, a global initiative dedicated to healing our lineages by helping women like you break free from generational patterns of emotional pain and trauma. I'm your co-host today, Veronica Barragan, also known as Jotira Tituar, and I'm very excited to announce that today we have our brand new co-host for the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement joining us on this generational healing segment. Please welcome Elvira Mariscal, who brings a wealth of knowledge and personal experience to our discussions. How are you, Elvira?
I'm good. I'm excited. A little bit nervous, but I'm excited.
Oh my gosh. I
I,
am so freaking excited. I've always wanted to have a co-host for the podcast. And when you and I first originally met, I knew that this was a long sisterhood friendship beyond anything, and just always have been inspired and admired your own personal journey. And it is such a huge honor to have you as our co-host to help also bring a lot of wisdom and light and knowledge to these sometimes very tough and serious journeys of the generational healing journey, what it all is comprised of. So thank you for stepping up and thank you for being our co-host.
oh no, thank you for having me. Honestly, I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And I don't know why I didn't think of asking you because it would be perfect just because of this journey we're on. But I've been wanting to do this for a while, honestly. So I'm excited.
I'm so thankful to God. So thankful. So today on our first podcast together, we're going to be diving into a really crucial topic that affects many women, yet many women are not even aware. And what I'm referring to is the generational cycle of toxic masculinity. So today we're going to explore how women can inherit and perpetuate aggressive, controlling, violent behaviors, and most importantly, how we can break free from these cycles. We're going to explore what toxic masculinity is, exactly how it shows up in our lives, and why it's not always only equated to males or our fathers or the masculine in our lives. So we're gonna get into it, and then after we're done with this generational segment, stay with me because we'll go right into the weekly astrology update and also the ancestral tarot guidance for the week. So being that you and I have worked in many settings, not only business settings, in the real estate community, and on our own healing journey of generational healing, we both have personal knowledge and experience and what we're going to talk about today. But I think before we get into how this pattern gets passed down in the DNA, we have to first talk about what is toxic masculinity, because I think a lot of people, when they hear that, either they've never heard that term, or when they hear it, I think it's easy to say, well, that has to do with the man. That has to do with men in my life.
Yeah.
So can you help us first understand, like when I say toxic masculinity, what does that mean to you, or how have you seen that show up?
Well, I've seen it on both sides, obviously with males, but I've also seen it with females. And I think people don't, like you said, people usually always think masculine toxicity, it's always going to be the male. But no, I do see it with the machismo, especially in our culture. Um, generations, because we go back to we only know what we know, we only know what we saw, we only know what we were taught, what we learned as kids. So we think that's normal. But then I think also women have been so, we're all tired, including men. Like we've all craved for this change because we knew that didn't work, obviously, but we didn't know how to make any of those changes. We didn't realize like, well, what's up to us? Let's learn something different. Let's be different than what we were taught. So then women in their frustration, I think they get to a point where they become they inherit this masculine toxicity. You know what I mean? Where they become either they don't have a choice and they have to become like alphas, but they take it to a level where it becomes very toxic. You know what I mean? Like I've seen it on both sides. Definitely see it on both sides. I'm I'm assuming you have too. Like even with myself, honestly. I could be very aggressive, but once it's funny because I was telling one of my best friends, I was like, she's like, why are we so aggressive? I'm like, I don't know. Like once I get mad, it's like right now, like especially when I get angry at my husband, I'm like, no, let's take over this right now. No, let's talk about it right now. And he's just like, once we calm down, we'll talk about it. And I'm like, no. right now. like I'm gonna throw down right now. Like, and he's like, no, and he's right. You know what I mean? He's like, no, because when we're angry, we're gonna say things that we don't really mean, and we're just gonna hurt each other. So when we both calm down, we'll talk. You know?
And it goes back to what you were saying about machismo. So in our culture in Mexico, I think when you think about toxic masculinity, when I think of my grandpa and my great grandpa, it was only the males that were doing that in our
Oh yeah.
culture,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like our grandma, I don't know about your grandma, but my grandma, even though my grandfather was like cheating on her, and I don't remember if I was told that he actually hit her before, but I know that on my dad's side, my grandfather did do that to my grandmother. On my mom's side, I don't know if it got that bad because my grandma was one of those ladies in the 1930s that even though she was being cheated on, she was standing up for herself, which is very rare.
Yeah.
But I know that in our culture, when you think about that's why a lot of people think toxic masculinity it's male. It's because we do come from a long line of machismo in Mexico, where the women had to stay quiet and they were not allowed to be aggressive.
Yeah.
In our generations now, it's like there's this feminist movement, there's this go be a boss, bad ass bitch, you know, what they call it and all that. And there's this now women taking on this aggressiveness. And I think it's so important to talk about right now because I don't know about you, but I've been so inspired by I know all politicians have their dark and light side. And politicians, I mean, to get to the top, they've done just the way in Hollywood, they've probably done some really atrocious things to get there, right? So I'm one of those that doesn't really trust a lot. However, I've seen last week with the Mexican inauguration of the presidenta, the Mexican president, and she was actually being made fun of by I don't know if you saw it. He's a famous Mexican actor, Rafael Inclán. He's the OG. Have you ever heard of him?
Comedian, no? Was it a comedian or he's a comedian? Yeah.
He's a comedian. So he
Oh,
was
yes.
saying, yeah. So he made this comment about how, oh, in the next 6 years, we're going to have a housemaker as a president, and was like trying to insult her, right? So the machismo is there, but I love the way she answered. She answered by saying, not only can women be presidentas, she uses the A in Spanish, she uses the A for women. So what I don't like about what he said is that he tried to make it seem like a housemaker was something that was bad or not important. Not only can I be the president, but I can also be a grandmother, a mother, and also a housemaker, and I'm proud of it. And that's what I'm trying to say. There was a feminist movement that wanted women, and there's a lot of conspiracies around this that it was created really to just, in essence, make women so masculine that they forget that their most important legacy is raising their children and their houses. And like she is stating, we can do it all. We can, what we can't do, and this is what I feel was really programmed post the feminist movement, is that it's much more important for a woman to go become a CEO and forget her home. That's the problem that we are dealing with. And it comes from the aggression, like you said, we get angry as women now, I believe, because we have seen the male abuse the women for such a long time. But then what happens now where we've like now completely gone overboard and now we feel that it's something not good enough if you're a housemaker or that we forget that our biggest legacy is our children. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. There has to be a balance. It's just like in everything. There has to be a balance. And honestly, I think we're all trying to figure it out. You know, like we've been so set in these ancestral patterns, in our culture patterns for so many years, and nobody has fought them. And it gets to the point where I can't do this anymore. And I think a lot of women have gone to that point where I can't do this anymore. Like I don't, and nobody knows what to do. It's like when I told you, like when I started this journey, I felt my soul was dying. Like I couldn't do it anymore, but I didn't know how to fix it. And then later I realized on the verge of divorce, on the verge, like my marriage was falling apart. And then we started to work things out. And then I realized like, he's tired too, you know, because once we were trying to work things out, we would get upset because it's normal. We get upset. And I would just kind of just go into my room, my closet. I would start organizing stuff, whatever. And he would come in like kind of freaked out. Like, I can't go back to the way things were. And he would tell me, he's like, I can't I can't go back. I can't. And then I realized, like, wow, like I'm tired of the way we were doing things, but he was tired too. But he, just like me, he didn't know what to do to fix it. I didn't know what to do to fix it. And I think a lot of us are in the same place, but we get into that rhythm of like, well, now I'm gonna do what men used to do all the time, and now and then we get into this phase of we get too much in our masculine. And just like with everything, we need to find that balance, because we also get to the point where we start demasculating them and we don't let them be and then we're not being the feminines that we need to be as well, and still have that masculinity in us. But then they themselves, they're not allowed to cry. Men don't cry. What do you mean? They're human beings. Why can't they cry? Like, they have emotions. They have feelings too. And then we want them to love us and be romantic and give them flowers. And at the same time, they're like, men are not supposed to cry. They're confused too. They're like, well, what is right? What is wrong? It's just finding that balance of also letting them be men and step up to how they feel comfortable themselves too. But just like with everything, you have to have boundaries. There has to be respect. There has to be.
But then that's the whole thing that you bring up a great point that it started with the patriarchy and the way the men have been treated, like you say, don't cry, don't show your emotions. That's a weak sign. And I don't know about in other cultures, but in our cultures, like cheating on your wife was okay, like in the 20s and the 30s. And all of those things were what made you a man. And the whole thing that we're trying to explain here is that the masculine and the feminine live in both of those energies live in males and females.
Yeah.
There's divine feminine energy that we know that it's associated with creativity, intuition, openness, fluidity, the nurturing aspect of ourselves. Men have that too.
Yeah.
And women and the masculine energy, what that really represents is now the action, the logical mind, the protection, the strength. Males and females both have that in them. And it's like you said, it's that balance and finding when do I need to use one versus the other, because the whole thing is that being raised, and we're going to do a whole podcast episode on the father wound separately here in a couple of weeks. But the whole thing is that being raised by dads that were not allowed to express their emotions and feel what they feel. And then later on, the generations turned where now, 'cause I don't know about you, but my mom was actually very masculine in her energy because my grandfather did all those things to my grandmother. My grandmother stood her ground. My grandfather was murdered when my mom was really little. So she grew up without a dad. So grandma took on this very masculine role where she's like, no one's going to mess with me. This aggression, this anger, this unprocessed grief. So then mom became very, very masculine. So
Yeah.
she's like, I'm going to take care of myself. Her attitude was always like, I don't need a man. Right. Thankfully, my dad had a lot of divine feminine energy in him. And I was actually, even though my mom and I could not connect when I was little because she was so separated from her feminine nurturing side, and from the depression that she was going through, my dad did have that in him, which is rare. And he had that in him, and he was a guy who would do my hair in ponytails and, tell me that I was doing good in school and all those things. But even with him, it was like a battle with mom, like you said. The demasculinization is horrific, which was a program that and then I learned where I had to then, my husband was like, that ain't gonna work with me as much as I tried. But that's exactly why we choose these partners to learn these lessons and to not be ashamed. Because I can tell you that I absolutely did abuse my masculine energy because that's how I was raised. And I was just like, I'm going to do this by myself. I don't need a man. How many women think that way now? They're saying that most women right now are getting pregnant on their own, either
Yeah.
through fertility and all those treatments or whatever, because they don't need a man. What I'm saying is that the balance, only you know what that looks like, right? There are
Yeah.
some of us that will not go out there and become corporate CEOs and that will fully devote themselves to their homes. But what I'm saying is that we need to pay attention of when it becomes toxic. Because
Yes.
I feel, I don't know about you, but I think that a lot of women are actually struggling with toxic masculinity right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. because it goes back to saying they don't know how to make those changes. They don't know how to find that balance. And it goes back to finding your group, finding, it's been a process. You know what I mean? I started with these this coaching program. And then I've gone through psychologists and more coaching. When I finally came here, I'm like, oh my God, it was just, we were all women and we were all going through very similar things, and we still are. I was just listening to the Course in Miracles from this Tuesday, and I wanted to jump in, and I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly my parents, but they're like at a worse level, which is insane. And I'm like, I need to talk to all of them because so they don't reach that level of like, so like that it's so this bad. Um, but yeah, like I said, I was listening. I'm like, oh my God, I missed it, and I wanted to jump in and just talk to everybody. But yeah, just searching, finding your group, finding your people, finding your women, and it's weird because before, I was telling my sister before, I would run into women who would make me feel bad about myself or not good enough, or they would put me down. I'm like, this is not friendship. This is not. And then now I run into a lot of women who they're in the same situation where they want to grow. They can't keep doing the same thing. And they're willing to like sit with themselves, to look in the mirror, to like acknowledge how they're showing up as well in life, in their marriage, with as a mother, as everything. And that's where I think it gets hard, especially for everybody, even as human beings, to like take responsibility, just like they were saying on you guys on Tuesday, to take accountability and responsibility to like, I made these choices. I chose him as a husband, or I chose, this path for my life. And it's like, now you don't like it. So now you want to blame everybody around you. It's like, no, it takes responsibility to look in the mirror. And it's not easy. Probably one of the most difficult, painful things I've ever had to do is look in the mirror and take responsibility of for instance, what I was contributing to the problems in my marriage, instead of just blaming him for everything. And he's over here like, not my fault, you know. Poor thing. Now I go back and I'm like, oh my God, poor thing. I just blamed him for everything. But and then once you do the work, if you're really meant to be with that person, they come around, and then they take a look in the mirror, and then they start making the changes, and you're like, never in my life did I ever think this was possible. Never. That he would make the changes that he's made. And people that know them, they're like, my respects. People that have known him like before all of this, they're like, wow, like that's pretty amazing. And I'm like, yeah, like it was so simple. Like it's a hard journey, but at the same time, it's so simple. Like, why didn't we see this before? Why didn't we see it before?
But that's the whole thing. It's because you healed yourself. That's
Yeah.
why he was able to heal. And it's so true of what you're saying that women, like if you look at the industries, I know coming from the real estate industry and even in the wellness industry, there is toxic masculinity.
Oh yeah.
And women are literally made to compete against each other. Like men, I did a whole study on this because I remember one time I was asked to do like this speech about women and women of strength events. And men, like they get to the top of corporate and they bring another man along. They bring another man along. Women, they get to the top of corporate and they don't bring another woman along. Because first of all, there's not a lot of women. And second of all, they don't want the woman to then be better than them. And that's like a normal thing. And it was done on purpose of the patriarchy to keep women away. What you were describing about our community, with that class, like you have other women that are on the same path of consciousness, I mean, not on the same path of expanding their consciousness, on the same path of growing, of healing, and they're not there together to gossip. We start to bring down what that patriarchy did for a long time, which is to build barriers against women. Because again, we're being told compete against each other. You can't, only one can be at the top. That was age of Pisces. Age of Aquarius is everyone's coming along, or guess what? You're not going to get to the top that way. It's everyone's at the top. It's not just one person. And then we go and do that to our husbands because that's what we were taught in at home to do. And our husbands, like you said, poor guy, but at the same time, thank God he had the patience, right? He had the patience to kind of, same thing with me. My husband had to have a lot of patience. We almost got a divorce too in 2013. Why? A lot of reasons, but a big one was the demasculization. I didn't allow him. Men want to take care of us.
Yeah.
Men want to feel needed. That's their role. And when we don't allow that, because we have that mentality of what my mom taught me, which is like, you don't need a man to survive. And I'm not saying women should not go after their dreams or not have their own money or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that when you don't allow your partner to actually do what he's born to do, then you're furthering that program and you're creating barriers for what could be a beautiful life. So I think we have a lot of work to do. Like you said, we've done it's simple but hard. Why is it simple but hard? Because it requires both a scientific approach of changing our nervous system and our brains, but then the spiritual work. I mean, let's talk about what you mentioned, A Course in Miracles, right? How has A Course in Miracles played a role in that healing of the divine masculine and feminine energies in your life? How have you seen it play out?
Just knowing that, I think just trusting him 100%, whether I think something's going bad or something has gone wrong, it's just, no, it's all part of the process. You know, it's part of the process of learning. Like, even the bad things that have happened, if they didn't happen, wouldn't have started this journey of healing. I wouldn't have tried to learn more in the Course in Miracles. I wouldn't have tried to understand and or do my sadhana and meditate every day. Like, I would just, just trusting that he has a plan and he knows what he's doing. Even when certain things go wrong, I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this? There's a huge lesson here, and it's just really paying attention and listening to, like, okay, what am I trying to learn? And honestly, I think I've come to realize that they come to teach us too, or, our husbands, our spouses, everybody, whether it's been bad or good or whatever, they're teaching us something. Either they're teaching us not to continue to do the same thing and to learn how to do something different, or they're teaching us how to be. My husband's very much of live in the moment. And I'm like, he's been trying to teach me this our entire relationship. And I couldn't see it. 26 years together. Are you kidding me? Like, I couldn't see it. You know what I mean? And now I see, I'm like, wow. But it's, I really trusting the divine, trusting that he has control and he knows what he's doing. And a lot of times we fight it, like, why is this happening? Why is this, God, why are you doing this to me? Why did you put me through this? But it all has a purpose. We just have to trust it. Nothing has gone wrong. It's all been perfect. Just trusting.
Yeah, and I think without the spiritual psychotherapy, we kind of turn into victims. We're like, it's his fault. It's his fault. That's the fight that I always have, or not the fight, but the battle that I always have with my parents because and you know what? Watching them still do that as an adult, like I'm unhappy because of you, and the going back and forth really makes me reflect on how my children feel when my husband and I do that. That was our normal, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. And what the course gave me, which is what you're describing, is the spiritual psychotherapy of trusting God. Well, what ended up happening is that the reason I trusted God is because I did a lot of healing work of forgiveness through the course and a lot of just shifting of my perceptions that I'm not a victim, that he's not the problem. Well, he could have been. And some of you ladies may think, yeah, he's the problem because he cheated on me.
They are the problem, but no.
Totally get it.
It's their fault.
Exactly. Like my grandma could say, he was cheating on me, he was hitting me and all that. In essence, the problem is not him. The problem is you not honoring yourself for allowing that to happen, right? And I know a lot of women are going to be like, well, oh, I don't have the resources, I can't leave him and all those different things. Or he's the way he is, not because of the way I am. He's the way he is because that's the way he is, right? So like you said, it's like we all play a role in everything that is happening in our lives. And like you said, it's very difficult to come to the mirror and see how you play that role into it. Because once I started to get into the spiritual psychotherapy work of Course in Miracles, it was really about, I think the biggest thing is like changing my relationship with myself, but also with God. Like you said, I couldn't trust God before because I thought God was going to punish me for all these bad things I was doing. Because deep down, I knew that I could have been treating my husband better. And I wasn't, because I had this inner program, that's the toxic masculinity of, they're gonna cheat on you, betray on you, and leave you anyway. So you gotta take care of you, boo boo. You gotta put the boundaries up. You can't let a man intimately into your life, even if you've been married for 26 years like we have, right? So I think what the course really gave me is that releasing of the identity of, I'm the victim and he's the bad guy, and turning that into also ability to have a better relationship with myself and with God because of the guilt and shame and all those things that come with it. And that's when you stop looking at someone like they're the problem all the time, they stop being the problem. And they're, like you said, it's like simple. Like the husbands are like so happy that now, you're seeing them the way they want to be seen, because they've gone through their own toxic masculine stuff. Worse than us, I think. Don't you think?
Oh yeah. Just recently my husband was saying, he admitted it. He's like, my example of growing up was my dad was always drinking with his friends, doing his own thing. He's like, that's what I saw growing up. That's what I was taught. And he used my dad as an example. He was like, when I met you and your family, when I met your dad was an example to me, because he saw my dad, everything was for his wife, for his kids, for his grandkids, everything. He's like, your dad was never, he drank, but he was like, he was always chill. Everything was, he would go to work, come home. He never brought guys over. It was never this drinking fest of like, he's like, I didn't have that example. Your dad was an example of that for me. And I was like, wow, like I admire that of your dad, because I didn't see that growing up. So then we had this, and then I have this masculinity side where I'm just like very, I try to do things differently with my kids. I was more loving and affectionate. But then he was more like, he still had that I'm a man, and I wanted him to be more, sensitive, loving, whatever. But at the same time, it's like when he did try, I would push him away. And I have to accept and recognize that there were times where he's trying to be loving and affectionate, and I'm just like, don't touch me. With an attitude or in a bad mood. And then you go back and you're like, well, how was I expecting him to be all lovey-dovey if I'm over here rejecting him constantly, which is what I saw growing up as well. So just becoming aware of like, okay, there's certain things that work, there's certain things that don't work. What do we need to change? What do we need to work on? And then once I let go of that masculinity myself, and I became more affectionate, more loving with him, and then he's like a little kid. Like I see him get all like a little kid, like he gets all soft and stuff, and then he gets more loving and caring even more with me now, doing stuff he never used to do before. And I'm like, wow, like that's all that needed to change. That's why I go back to like, it was so simple, but we only knew what we knew. And like you said, with the Course in Miracles, learning to have also compassion for ourselves. So we only knew what we knew. Compassion for them, that they only knew what we knew, and focusing on our blessings, their good things. Because I do see a lot of people, and I did it myself, we focus on the negative, all the bad things that they do, or all the bad things our kids do, or our parents, whatever. And we don't focus on the good. And then it just keeps accumulating, like it grows bigger, the negative. And once you focus on your blessings, you're like, wow, the blessings are so much more than the bad things that have happened.
Oh, 1,000%. But like you said, it's an accumulation. It's a program. We don't even know. Like you said, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
And what do they say? We're unconscious 90 to 95% of the day. So you don't even know you're running that program of, I need to put the barriers up. Men are not worthy, or men are scum. I need to make sure I'm strong. because
Or
masculinity.
even that, constantly saying all men are cheaters, all men are this, all men. No, that is not true. It's like saying all girls, women too, we're all whatever. Like, no, that's not true either. And we're all different, and we just need to find that person that matches you, and you could actually work as a team. Because there's stuff that my husband does that he takes care of, and then I take care of. Like I, sometimes my husband's very, very handy, thank God. But he doesn't clean bathrooms, he doesn't do the laundry, he doesn't, I also work, he works too. But it's like he has his jobs, I have my jobs, and it's like it's okay. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean like I'm less of a woman because he won't do laundry. Like, no, like it doesn't, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, some men cook, my husband loves to cook. He loves to cook. And he'll wash his own dish. Like, he eats and he washes his own dish and he put it away. Like, he's like, you can't say I don't wipe. No, like he does his thing. But like, it took him a while. And I didn't even have to ask him. He just did it because he's like, I want to take a little bit of load off of you. You know what I mean? And then people just if I just focus on everything I don't like about him or everything that drives me crazy about him, we probably wouldn't be together right now. That would have ended already.
But that's the whole thing. Like you both are. You described so beautifully that he's not in a man role. He does what is good for him too. Like he likes to cook. You know, it's not like, oh, just because you're a man, you're not allowed to cook, right? But by the same token, he doesn't clean bathrooms, and you clean the bathrooms, and you same thing with me. Like my husband's always out in the field. I work from home, so I took it upon. He doesn't like to cook. He barbecues, right? That's all he could do, and I don't try to force him to learn to cook. I actually like to cook, so I cook. I do the laundry too because he's always out and about, and my doing the laundry is just as important as him getting the oil changes and doing the backyard, or it's not less or more. And some of you might have a different setup where you do all the cleaning and he doesn't do any of the cleaning. Whatever works for you is good. It's like you said, the match, whatever matches you have to have your own agreement based on that, but you also shouldn't feel bad or less than because you're the one that cooks and cleans and does all of that. That's such a sacred, beautiful role you play, like especially cooking and cleaning. Like this is your sanctuary house. This is a place where everybody comes in here and rejuvenates and replenishes. That's a very sacred role. Now the other thing that I was going to say, because you hit on this on matching, you know, that's where I think women don't understand and why they're so jaded. Like they feel they have to be so masculine because they're like, well, you don't know my life. I attract only garbage men. The men that I've had, if I told you about my last 5 relationships, they're abusive, they're narcissists, they're everything right down the list. Well, again, it's a perfect example of what you just said. You healed yourself, the relationship changed. You have a program in your mind. That was me. My program was men are the scum of the earth, men are gonna cheat on you. So of course that's how I saw my husband. Of course that's the people that I would bring into my life. So we gotta change your program. And we gotta
Yes.
change our there's the spiritual psychotherapy work of forgiveness for self, forgiveness for others, right? You're healing your relationship with God, the nervous system. I mean, these programs, my grandma's program of her not trusting men because of what happened with her with grandpa was already in her nervous system. It was wired in my mom's nervous system when she was pregnant with her. And when my mom was pregnant with me, I was already being wired with these things in the nervous system. So then that's where the meditation that you were talking about comes about. I'm a magnet. My thoughts, feelings, and emotions, whether I'm conscious or not about them, they are magnifying to me this reality. So when I started doing this inner work of Kundalini yoga meditation, my nervous system was being rewired. It was changing to what the program used to be. So then, ladies, if you change your nervous system and you do the work of self forgiveness and you know your worth and you know that a man can and should take care of you as well as you being able to do that for yourself, then guess what? You shouldn't be afraid of the man you're attracting because they're not going to be the same as Joe or Gerardo, who has always abused you. Like, does that make sense? Like, we've always talked about this.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's not everybody's the same. Sometimes I have, people are sometimes men can be, they work, they make the money, they work differently. Like they're on the computer, they're on a desk, they get it to get. You sit my husband on the computer, take care of bills or paperwork. You, I remember I told him not that long ago, I said, why don't we sell everything and we'll live in a little condo in San Diego. I just want to be by the beach. And he's like, you want to kill me? I'm like, what are you talking about? You're so dramatic. He's like, no me quieres matar. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, you can't put me in this little room, in this little, he's like, he needs to be outside. He's always outside in the garage. He's always working on some project. He's always on the yard. His meditation, his sadhana is nature. But if you sit him on a desk, he's not, you kill him. And there's people for everything. Sometimes I have friends that are like, oh my God, he's so handy. Yeah, he's very handy. But you cannot sit him at a desk. There's certain things he is not good at. And that's one of them. Or sometimes he like, it's a serious thing and he's just like, like stuff that, we'll talk about in another episode, but he's like, everything's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. I'm like, you don't know that. There's certain things we need to discuss because you don't know everything's gonna be fine. But that's his difficulty of he can't 100% express himself sometimes, his feelings, where I have to be more, okay, I get it. So it's just finding that balance and working as a team.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's nothing wrong with me cleaning my house and doing laundry. This is my sanctuary. This is where, especially all my kids, even the ones that are not here anymore, they come and then just this is our house. This is our home. Why would that be a bad thing? That I clean? Well, he's fixing my car. I don't have to pay a mechanic. He's doing it. He's my gardener. And then he was telling me we were talking about yesterday, like he checks the car before we leave on a trip. And he was like going like this, like, yeah, I always have to do that. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm always making sure you have underwear and you have all your gel and all your clothes and all your socks. And he's just like, yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. Like I did my part. And he's just like, yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. Working as a team, who cares? As long as you're working as a team. Right? Because there are some relationship with the woman does everything or just the man does everything. And that's not fair.
But it's the whole thing. I think what you said is so brilliant because it's the whole thing about when you have toxic masculine energy in you, what do? You try to control the man. You try to make him like if he doesn't sit on a desk. My husband's the same way. Even when he was in real estate, he's in construction now, but in real estate, he hated being in the office. He hated listing appointments. He liked going to show houses. He loved that. He needed to be out there. Same thing with his business now. My sons are part of the company as well. So my other one of them handles like the paperwork and the marketing and the other one does all that. Actually, the youngest one likes to be out like him. They're both really good partners together. But why force them to do something that they hate to do? Why not say, okay, I actually enjoy doing this, so let me take it from you, right? When you have toxic masculinity, you're not like that. You're controlling. And that's what I always saw with my mom. It was always like trying to control my dad, trying to tell him what he needed to do, what he needed to say. That's what I mean by demasculinization. It's like work as a team, find what works for you or not. Yes, it has to come into harmony and balance. And whatever works for you works for you. Like you said, it's not like the woman does all the cleaning just because women aren't supposed to do all the cleaning. Well, if she's working, how can you both find a balance where if he's not going to do it, maybe you're going to hire someone to help you at the house, right? If you are going to go to work, it's just not right when we try to force people to be something that they're not. And that's why I think what we're trying to say with the podcast is we all have divine feminine energy and masculine energy. Don't abuse either.
Yes.
Don't abuse either. Find your own rhythm. And as women, we need to stop being so damn controlling and allow the man to actually, and this is also for business. If your boss is a man or you're in an industry where there's only men at the top or whatever, same shit, see yourself as equal, but don't sell yourself out. Meaning, what is the most valuable, important thing? And I can tell you this because I was a woman that abused my masculinity for a long time. My most important thing is my legacy is my children, my home. That's the most important thing. Everything comes after that. And that doesn't mean that I'm not able now to go conquer my dreams or anything. It's just I know what my values are, I know what my priorities are, and I know who I am. When you can have those three things in line, then you can go become the president of Mexico or whatever country you want, but not sell yourself out. Because I think that's the whole thing about the toxic masculinity. It forces you to sell yourself out, where you are like, yeah, I'm kicking ass. Look at me. I'm at the top of the game. I'm the boss of this, and that. But they hate you at home.
Yeah.
Your children don't know you. Your
Yeah.
husband, or you're on the fifth and seventh divorce, which was where we were going to go. If we didn't do the healing journey, we would have been divorced by now.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So breaking it down, solution wise, what if women now are realizing maybe they didn't even realize that they were in these toxic masculine programs? What would you suggest for women to do to begin their journey of finding balance and harmony in both? And this goes also for a woman who may be imbalance in her divine feminine, where again she's not speaking up for herself. Like, what would you suggest is the first thing to start to actually do?
I think it works differently for every woman, for every person. I always tell everybody, "Call Veronica, this program is for me." You know what I mean? But not everybody is into the whole meditation based on their religion. They're like, no, I don't believe in that stuff, which I get it. I respect. It's fine. Just searching, I speak to women and I have girlfriends where we're like, oh, do you follow this guy? Oh, this guy, he does decodification, or, you know, why we're sick,. Why the symptoms. There's just so much information now that we have access to, just to research online, like find your group, especially if you're a woman, find that group of women who are on the same journey of healing, of learning a different way. They are willing to do the work, because it actually does help. There's so many audiobooks, and there's a lot of them are free. A lot of them are on YouTube. You know what I mean? They're like, the chapters are all there. You just have to look for it. Once you start looking for it, it's like with the algorithms, it starts popping up.
Yeah.
Coaches online, the programs. Like I said, I have girlfriends that are like, oh my God, do you follow this guy? I'm like, no, no, no. They're like, oh, he's so good. And then you start, now I'm listening to I forgot his name. It's David something. He's always talking about Kabbalah.
Oh,
Never in my life have I don't know how he popped up. I love listening to him. And that's not my religion, but everything that I'm hearing him say, I don't see nothing wrong with it. I'm just like, okay, I get what he's saying. He's not saying like go out in the world and hate everybody. No, on the contrary, like each person has a purpose. They've everything you've gone to, even the Course in Miracles, it's almost very similar. It all had a purpose. And as painful as some situations have been, they brought you to this moment, because there's certain God is giving you an opportunity to heal. When he's giving you in that situation that maybe it was so painful and so hurtful, but he's giving you that situation, be like, here you go. What are you going to do with it? Let's heal. Let's see it in a different way. And a lot of us get into that mindset of like, why is this happening? And you get all sad and blah, 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 which is okay. We need to feel it, the anger, the pain, whatever. But it's like, get to the point where, okay, so what are the changes I need to do? I know in the beginning, I had to dissect everything that I was doing. Even when I would get upset, okay, why are you upset, Elvira? Why are you angry? Do you have a right to be angry? Was it really his fault? Did he have control over what was happening? No, he didn't. Okay, so why are you angry? If it was not his fault, he didn't do it on purpose. He was not trying to be mean to you. He was just, that was the situation. So how are we going to handle this? How are you going to respond differently? Like, it was a lot in my head for a while where I just had to question everything, my whole reaction, why I was feeling that way, where it was coming from. And then just really take a moment and be like, okay, you can't keep reacting the same way. It's not okay. Calm down and figure out what's the proper way. And then now I don't have to think about it that much. And every once in a while, I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? But it just being just more aware and just looking. It's all there. God will guide you.
Mhm.
And once you start doing the work, you know, he gets very loud. He gets very loud, not in the sense like, oh my God, you're so, it's more like in your face, like, it's right here. Oh, okay. Right here. Oh, let me go this way. You know, like he's right there. He's right there guiding you. He really is.
It's
Amazing.
ironic. It's ironic how loud he gets, huh?
Yeah, and it's just, and it's not, it's just, he's just very direct now. He's just, no, this way. And like, oh, it's very obvious now. Like, I see the signs before? They've been there. They've been there all our lives. We just couldn't see them.
Well, and a lot of it is because of all the inner work, the meditation, the nervous system being more, regulated. We're more conscious, we're more
Yeah.
aware. But I totally agree with you. I feel that that's exactly the pathway the community aspect is key. Because when you're going through these things, you think you're the only crazy one. You
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
you come from the only dysfunctional family in the world. My sister was just telling me how she's been really into listening to this medium, like people that can go beyond the spiritual. They can talk to the people that have transitioned. And she was sharing with me how even this person has been able to find like some of these crazy ass family secrets. And I was like, does every family have like secrets like that? She's like, oh, you haven't even seen nothing yet. And I was like, what the hell? Like there was a story of like one where the grandma had kidnapped the daughter. It wasn't even her daughter.
Oh my
And they found out afterwards. So it's so important to be part of a community so that you don't feel that you're going crazy. What happens when we have a lot of like depression or anxiety, or when we're in these toxic masculine patterns, is that we just think we're the only ones that are going through this. We think we're the only ones with the problem, and there's a lot of shame around it. There's a lot of guilt, and that people don't want to necessarily talk about. I think it's changing now, where people are now saying, I think it's maybe even trendy to be in a healing journey, or to be have a therapist or like a psychologist, right? So I think it's crucial, like you said, the community aspect. But I think the other thing when you mentioned was is very true, is being open minded. Like you said, like so many people just feel that they living the way they live in anxiety, high levels of depression, toxic relationship patterns, that that's the normal, that that's just the way life is. And one thing that I've always admired about you is how open-minded you have been, where you're like in conviction, like me, where that's where I saw myself. It's like I'm in conviction that I'm going to heal, and I believe that I can heal. So many women don't believe that, and because of that, they're not open-minded, and they don't go look at that doctor or that holistic doctor, or they don't go look at that Kabbalah teacher, which to me, I love Kabbalah too. It's incredible. And all the other spiritual traditions that have taught me, or like you said, even in meditation, they're afraid because of religious programming and all of that, which is it's fine. Like no one's telling you you have to follow my path or your path exactly, but there are tools out there, and you do have to be open minded, especially right now where I can't wait to do an episode with you on like the medical industry and how much they fail us, and how far behind they actually are to getting to these root causes. But in either case, if you're willing to heal, you do have to be open minded. You
Yeah.
do have to trust your intuition. And you have to trust, like what you said, that God, once you make a commitment to heal yourself, God is speaks very, very loud and puts the right people, the right technique, and the right modalities in front of you to actually make that happen. I don't know. Wouldn't you agree?
I think he's always given us that opportunity, because I've seen it where there's a lesson to be learned and people keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it because they haven't learned the lesson. So you're like stuck. Kind of like when you're listening to music and it just keeps popping the same, you're stuck and it keeps playing the same thing over and over again until you're finally able to, okay, why is this keep happening to me? But just being open-minded to, when you finally do start that journey, he's going to put those people in front of you. And a lot of times they betray you or whatever, or, they hurt you or whatever, but it's also a purpose. There was a purpose there. It had to happen that way for you to open your eyes, even the sickness, even when we get unhealthy or something, sickness happens. Okay, what is this trying to teach me? Obviously, there's a lesson here that I haven't learned, or that I haven't, because I wasn't mentally there. We have to really be open to having God speak to us and guide us, because He will put the people in front of us. He will. He definitely will give you the signs. You just have to be willing to listen.
Which is
A lot
why
of people are stuck in the ego. They're like, no. Even though they say they believe in God or they go to church or whatever, I've seen it where they're just so stuck in, really, you believe in God and you're listening to Him, but yeah, you're doing all these other things. Have you, like, it's in the 10 Commandments. What are you talking about? Like, what do you mean God said it was okay? No, no. Like, what do you mean? Sometimes they're listening to not God. It's, like you said, it's the ego. Could it be that that's what, I don't like saying his name. Is that what the D is? Ego, maybe? The
the
devil?
deep,
I call him the devil.
yeah, I would say that because it's the opposing.
Yeah, right? I don't think I've ever seen that way. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That's the opposing energy to the light. Absolutely. And those are the deeds are exactly what gets passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation.
I never seen it that. I just had an aha moment right now. Okay. Wow.
And it, even though it was created, everything is created through God, there's a way to learn to transcend and not identify with it. That's what this is all about. But the whole thing about toxic masculinity is that when you're in these patterns of toxic masculinity, the nervous system is wired in such a way that you even trying to talk to someone, they're not going to hear you. When I try to talk to somebody who has severe trauma and who has never done the healing work, or who's completely dysregulated, because you can tell when someone's nervous system is completely dysregulated. They're irate, they're screaming, or they're not conscious, right? Us telling them all this, or them going to church in one ear out the other. You know what I mean?
Family that they're like,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
you're like, okay, I'll stop. But
Yeah.
they're not ready. They're not ready. They're not ready. It's like
And
barely even touched the like surface, and they're like,
yeah.
I'm like, okay, never mind. Sorry, you're not ready. You're not there, and it's
You,
okay.
yeah, because you and I have already not understood. We're talking to their inner child that has been really hurt, and we're talking to a nervous system that is constantly putting adrenaline and cortisol. They can't even hear us. That's why they can't hear God, you
Yeah.
know? So we don't take it personal anymore. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that regardless of how unaware you are or how much into these toxic masculine patterns you're in, everything is healable because you and I are representations of that. I know I come from the most toxic masculine patterns in my lineage and the way I used to be. And my journey, although it hasn't necessarily been simple, it's been incredibly powerful and empowering, and to see how much I have evolved from that woman who was so afraid to be intimate with herself, with God, with everybody around her is miraculous. And that's what keeps me motivated. So
Yeah.
I think we do have to do a lot of the spiritual healing, of course, because everything to me, it's been shown billions of times now that the spiritual world is much more important than the physical realm. But then we can't avoid the work. That's where the meditation comes in. You have to change your nervous system. You have to work on that brain because if we don't change the patterns at that root level, it's going to continue and you're not going to be able to hear, which is what we're trying to say today.
Completely agree.
Wow. This has been so much, and I'm sure we can talk about it forever and ever. And like I said, we're gonna do a follow-up podcast episode to this one on just the father figure and to kind of break it down as to where this could have began for you, but how it doesn't have to end there or it doesn't have to stay there. In all, I just want our audience to really understand that masculine or toxic masculinity is not something that only a male can experience. Many women are struggling with this right now, and it is associated with these patterns of generational trauma where we've been told that it is not safe to be in our divine feminine energy of creativity, intuition, and to be that nurturer. Reach out, of course, to either one of us. Put your comments down below in the description. Let us know how we can support you. And of course, Also, let us know if this is something that you want us to go dive deeper into, because I think, like I said, that we can do several podcast episodes. All in all, the key here is that we can disrupt the cycle and you can feel safe in both the feminine and masculine, especially in a time where that is absolute. What are any last words you want to say before we close out this?
I completely agree. Just finding that balance again and then searching. You will find what you're searching for. It's like there's that saying in Spanish, if you look for it, you will find it. And you will. And if you really want to like change your life and change how you see life and you know, your body is telling you. My body was telling me. I could feel it inside me. My soul was telling me, if you don't find something, if you don't make the changes, I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know what I needed. I just knew I needed a change. My soul was dying. I literally, I could feel it. I'm like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. I need to find something. And some people agree and some people don't, and that's fine. We know we have family that agree and we have family that don't, and they think we're crazy and maybe just a little bit, but not like that. I always tell her, crazy, but not that crazy. Not like crazy like that. And we could just laugh. We just joke about it. But no, yeah, let us know whatever we could help. Because I think deep down inside, I think we relate on so many levels, but we generally do want to help. Even men, like it doesn't have to be just women, but we want to help people. We would, we've been through it, we've gone through it, like just learning a different way, because obviously the way we've been doing things doesn't work. I think it's more than obvious.
So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Elvira. This has been such a powerful, powerful discussion on breaking the cycles of toxic masculinity, and everything you've added just has added so much depth to what we're trying to get this message out to a lot of women. So as we all now process what we've learned in this episode and begin our generational healing journey, let's really learn to also be patient with the process. Infinite patience produces immediate results. So if you're just now beginning on your healing journey, I welcome you to join us in our free private Facebook group community, the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement, where we share even more information about toxic masculinity and overall how to break the cycle of generational trauma. Thank you so much for being here, Elvira. I will see you next week.
Yes. Thank you.
Wow.
Big thank you to my sovereign sister Elvira and co-host of the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast for this very powerful discussion on breaking the cycles of toxic masculinity. Your insights have just added so much depth to our conversation, and I am so excited to continue the conversation every week. So make sure you join Elvira and I to discuss everything you need to know on generational healing. So as we process what you've learned and begin our own personal generational healing journey, let's zoom out for a moment and just look at the astrological energies at play this week, because this is a very important week. The weekly astrology update is going to help you understand how these planetary movements are influencing not just your personal growth and healing, but also the collective consciousness. Astrology is the oldest science and the oldest tool for self-realization, and it's here to assist you to crowning yourself, just the way the Kundalini Yoga meditation path and A Course in Miracles path allows us also to do. So I want to talk about two very specific things happening this week. Every time a planet or sign changes its movement, it creates big rippling changes, because as above, so below. And I want to talk about two very important transits that are happening this week that you need to watch out for. And this is all coming from the tail end of this lunar eclipse in Libra that just occurred on October 3rd, 2024, meaning that the eclipse energy is 6 months long. So the things start to play out and unfold. Whatever lessons you were learning, whatever was being eclipsed in your life, the story starts to unfold over the next 6-month period. But this particular eclipse, as I spoke about last week, it really was about bringing the issues that are tied to your relationships, harmony, codependency, bringing them to the light, to culmination. What has been hidden and suppressed now being exposed. And it was about ending old cycles and recalibrating how we relate to others. But it was an emotional purge, because Pisces is all about emotions, and we had to feel what we we're feeling in order to disrupt that pattern. And for many of us, it was very difficult because Venus in Scorpio, which was a big part of this eclipse, is not fun to be around. Very intimate, taboo, things being exposed. And on a societal scale, it was about confronting these inequalities and abuse of power and partnerships, and a lot of public unrest occurred. There were several cracks in the political system, in the celebrity Hollywood world, with the upcoming US election, where there was struggle for justice that was being exposed. There was heightened polarization. And now the surfacing of these hidden agendas, especially as it relates to political campaigns, it's all being brought to the light. What gets done in the darkness will be exposed in light. So now we're coming from that energy and stepping into this week with two important things to note. First, Jupiter is going to go retrograde. It's been in Gemini since the summertime. Now it's going to go retrograde in Gemini beginning October 9th. And it's going to stay retrograde from February until February 4th, 2025. And this is kind of a big deal. And the reason it's a big deal, it's because Jupiter, as it is the planet of expansion. It's a planet of grandiosity. It's the planet that makes everything bigger. And in Gemini, they're not necessarily best friends. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and they're not two energies that like to hang out. So what it's doing in Jupiter and Gemini is expanding and reflecting and bringing to light our communication styles, our intellectual growth, our belief systems, and how we connect with others. And when it goes to reverse, it's not that it's a bad thing. There's no good or bad. It's more of an inner journey. So direct, we were seeing all these things in the outer world, in the global, in the collective. Now that it goes retrograde, it goes in this inner journey of gathering information and things that are going to be exposed, like misinformation. We've been lied to. Like, for example, there's things that have come out now about Facebook and how the government was asking them to suppress information about during the COVID, the pandemic that occurred. That was done on purpose, and information was basically not being allowed for people to see it. So now that's being exposed. So that is going to take the same theme, but in your own personal life. What was misinformation that was being held back, now getting ready to be exposed? That's why your communication styles and your beliefs, and especially around media and anything that has to do communication, are going to be brought to the light. Remember, Gemini is the sign of duality, of thought processes. Now, Jupiter retrograde, what is it doing? Collective questioning of truth, of media narratives. And with the US election in full swing, you better expect a very critical reevaluation of political discourse, of campaign messaging, and even scandals involving the spread of misinformation. You're going to see a lot more of that. And on a personal level, you might find yourself going inward, rethinking your beliefs, how you express your ideas, how you gather knowledge, who you believe and who you don't, the media versus not, celebrities, Hollywood versus not, because it's a time to look at whether we're communicating clearly or engaging in this mental overload. And that is crucial because many times in the past, there have been situations where Jupiter has been in Gemini, for example, in 1941, when we had the Pearl Harbor attack. I was just listening to one of my favorite astrologers, Lori, from Lunatic Astrology. I'll link that episode here below, but she was talking about a possible situation where Pearl Harbor is repeated again in the United States of America. And I'll explain it more as we talk about the next transit, which is Pluto going direct in Capricorn. But Jupiter was direct in Gemini when that occurred in 1941. So retrograde could be like we're gathering all of this information and we're looking at all the way we've been lied to and all that. And then there's civil unrest, and then that leads to, situations like Pearl Harbor or things like that nature. We have to look at history because history repeats itself. That's the beautiful thing about astrology. You can go back to see when these transits were happening in the past, and it will repeat itself, maybe not identically, but in the very same energies. So we have to pay attention. If you want to stop the cycle, disrupt the pattern, you have to be aware what was happening in my life. You were not alive maybe in 1941, but that's why astrology is so amazing, because you can look at transits, like other transits that have happened sooner. And Jupiter in Gemini it's a transit that doesn't take as long as Pluto going into a new sign. It takes 240 some years for Pluto to go around the sign. For example, in Capricorn, it will never happen again in our lifetime again. Jupiter is very different. It doesn't take that long. The cycles are much shorter. So just a lot of unrest, a lot of things exposed, and a lot of people not liking the truth that they've been living under a false lie for a long time. And this is very relevant because the other transit that I want to talk about this week to pay attention to is Pluto finally going direct in Capricorn. It was retrograde most of the summer, and now it's going direct October 11th. And then it leaves Capricorn for 240 some years, November 19th. So Pluto going direct in Capricorn is huge, because you heard me talk about the Pluto return of the United States of America. This is a Pluto coming back to its original position when the U.S. Constitution was created in 1776. And this Pluto return in America started actually in 2022, peaking now at this time because it's getting ready to finally leave Capricorn. And what has been happening since that time, it's been shaking up systems of power, of government, of corporation, institutional structures. So now going direct October 11th, this is the final push to reshape these foundations before Pluto leaves Capricorn for good on November 19th after the election. That's why there's a lot of talk, especially in astrology, and I sort of do agree with it. No, I do agree with it, that basically this election is either going to be delayed or we won't know who the winner is for a while, for a long time. And there's some things in the charts of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris that are indicating this, but there's some also detrimental things that a lot of astrologers are forecasting can occur, especially if they're going to occur, they're going to happen in October before the election, because Capricorn represents authority, discipline, societal structures. So Pluto's moving forward, even if it's moving slowly. So now whatever has been brewing since 2008, it's coming to the light. This is not good for those people that have not transformed and changed and allowed an old self to die. But if you're like me, I'm a Capricorn sun. I've been transforming. I'm not even close to who I used to be even last week, especially not since 2008. And that is why those that have done the inner work, those that have listened to their inner guidance and have done the changes that need to be done for generational healing, Pluto going direct is also a great harvest. Like this week is an incredible week of abundance, of harvesting, of now Pluto bringing to the light all of these things, of lessons. I heard a community member of mine in the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy say, the lessons are coming so fast, I don't even know how to stop them. But the lessons are lessons of liberation, lessons of self-worth, lessons of no one needs to govern me. I can govern myself. So as we're moving through this direct period, the transit is going to especially be reckoning with the United States of America. It's going to force the nation to confront its historical power dynamics. And I heard the same astrologer, Lori, in Lunatic Astrology, talk about the fact that every war that has ever been played out, the United States of America has been part of it. So there's governance issues, there's societal structures. This is a time of deep restructuring. And with the election, it's going to be a pivotal part of this transformation. This transition from Pluto and Capricorn to Aquarius is going to focus especially on these traditional structures, breaking them down so that they could be more progressive and having to do with humanitarian ideals. Why? Because Aquarius is of the people. That's why there's a lot of civil unrest that's to follow this election, because power has to be restored back to the people. And if it's not, people are going to revolt. Pluto and Aquarius brings revolutionary changes in technology and societal movements. So expect heightened call for reforms and radical shifts in governance, technology, societal norms in the next year. I can't wait to share with you all of the astrology for 2025. I'm going to wait to do that as we get closer to November and December. I don't know exactly when I'm going to publish that podcast episode, but the world will never be the same again. This is the beginning of time. The Mayans spoke about this with Neptune's influence in 2025. So the election is just the beginning of this transformative era where the US and the world, it's happening in Spain, it's happening in Britain, it's happening wherever there's been abuse of power. We learn to move towards a collective progress to freedom, unconventional solutions, especially with technology to these problems we've had for a long time. And the United States of America, yes, is like the light is being shined upon it because it's going through its Pluto return, a time of death, rebirth, transformation on a national scale. It's not a coincidence that this return coincides with this critical election year. Pluto is exposing corruption, power abuses, and systematic decay. The Band-Aid has come off, the abuse of women and children. So in summary, Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is going to prompt reflection on communication, media narratives, intellectual growth, but it's also going to expose where we've been lied to. Pluto direct in Capricorn marks the final push for systematic restructuring and a shift toward a more progressive, tech-driven, and collective society. And if you are not vibrating in that frequency, you're going to suffer. And Pluto will bring it to the light. So these transits together, they're creating an atmosphere of deep internal and external transformation. We're looking at these transits, if you look at them on a societal scale, there's cleansing that occurred with the Pisces eclipse, a move towards empathy and humanitarian movements, while Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is going to challenge societal discourse, bringing attention to misinformation or revisiting historical narratives, while Pluto direct in Capricorn at a large scale is bringing shifts in government, economy, institutional system, finalizing the structural transformations that we've all been going through and that has been brewing for many years. So this is a combination of both individual and collective awakening, of restructuring and renewal. And that's why your nervous system stabilization and regulation, as well as your brain agility to process all this information, is key. And there is no magic pill for that. It's called the inner work. And that's what our generational healing sessions are all about in this podcast, to help you learn to stay sovereign, to take your sovereignty back. And what it means is to break those patterns and cycles, to realize how powerful you are and that you are creating this reality. So big things happening. I can't wait to share with you more next week when we're going to talk about this full moon in Aries. That's very pivotal to what is happening in the world and especially in the United States of America. So now that we've explored both these personal and collective aspects of the astrological energies this week, let's turn to our ancestors for additional guidance. It's time now for our weekly tarot reading, where we're going to seek this wisdom from those who came before us to light our path in breaking these generational cycles and reclaiming our sovereignty. But before we do that, if you are enjoying this podcast episode, I want to remind you to hit that like button. It doesn't cost you anything. Hit the subscribe, leave us a comment here below. We are growing this movement and we are calling upon all women to step into their sovereign power and to break those cycles so they could reclaim their sovereignty in these very epic, beautiful times to be alive. So hit that like button, hit that share. Thank you so much because it does help the channel grow tremendously. So I want to go over this week's ancestral tarot reading. And I love it. I love it so much because one of the things that I keep hearing, last week, it was very obvious for me. I woke up one morning getting ready to go into my meditation with my community, the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy, and I heard the ancestors are back. The ancestors are back. And even with all the chaos that's happening in the world, it is very true that justice is being bestowed upon the world. The Band-Aid has come up. We're seeing how through the situation with the fall of Hollywood, for example, the truth about the abuse of women, the truth about the abuse of children, the truth about government entities like the CIA, like CPS, like all these people that we were supposed to trust have always been abusive and have always taken advantage. So it's a critical time for humanity because the band-aid's off. So what's happening is that a lot of people, those that have not done the inner healing work, they're very triggered right now, and they're very frozen, and they're very deep into their generational trauma. But by the same token, thank God the band-aid's finally off, because what's happening in the world, and this is what I'm seeing, is God's hand. Justice being served, stories being told correctly. For example, the president of Mexico standing up to the president of, or the king of Spain, who a lot of the Spaniards are now going against the king. They don't even want a king. They're like, why do we need to pay this guy all this money when the only reason he's up there is because of his last name? And look what's happening also wherever else there's kings and queens. Like, people are not falling for that anymore. That's the age of Aquarius. That's the last Pluto in Capricorn, right? But the president of Mexico refused to invite the president from Spain to her inauguration because he wouldn't apologize. He was still telling a narrative that the Mayans and the Mexica, because they were not Aztecs, the Spaniards invented that word because they didn't want to confuse people with Mexica and Mexico. So the Mexica and the Mayans always were an advanced civilization. The story and the narrative that they were trying to say is that the Spaniards came, and believe me, I got Spaniard blood in me too. I've got Mexican blood in me, indigenous Purepecha, so it's hard for me to just, I love my Purepecha roots, but of course I have to honor also the part of Spaniard that's in me. But the truth is that this king was still trying to be egotistical, and he didn't apologize, so he didn't get invited. And the president of Mexico right now is really working, and I'm not saying she's like an angel or like someone to be trusted. I feel like any politician, you need to keep them on a short leash because they all have also an ulterior motives. But by the same token, there are some presidents that actually do love their country and do want what's best for the country, versus what really happened in Mexico for the last 4 presidents. Not this last one, AMLO was not sold out. He really helped. But prior to AMLO loved this country a lot, sort of like Donald Trump really loves this country a lot. And again, I'm not putting Donald Trump on a hierarchy. He has so much, he's sold out just as much as Kamala Harris. But AMLO has been proven in Mexico to have done a lot of great things for his country because he loved his country, right? And prior to AMLO, there were 4 presidents who were actually trained by the CIA to basically govern Mexico, the US to govern Mexico. That is over and done with. So now Mexico is taking back, that's just an example, taking back her power, Mexico is. And she was asking for not only for them to ask for forgiveness, but also now she's putting in the true story, the true narrative that the Spaniards came to Mexico, murdered lots of indigenous Mayans and Mexicas, that they didn't come to save them. They were an advanced civilization. At one point, the Mayans were the biggest civilization in the entire world. So now it's like the Mandela effect. We've been told all these stories about history that are incorrect. A narrative. That's what Hollywood was being used for. That's what social media is being used for. They put plants, Haktua Girl, Demure, all those are plants that they put to sell you a narrative of how you need to think, dress, be, and act. The demure trend. Remember that got all big? Even I got into that. And what the truth is that now he's promoting how he's going to have his operation of transgender in public be published so everybody could see it. That's the narrative. Transgenderism. Same thing that was happening in the 1940s with Wet Republic, where there was just complete, look at these freak-offs. They're not freak-offs, they're sexual rituals. They're satanic rituals. So we need to wake up to that. Now, why is this all leading to what I was talking about, that the ancestors are back? Because by the same token, as much as this band-aid has come off, there's justice being restored, truths being told, lands being restored back to the people that actually truly did own them. So this is a time where they have awakened. This is a time where they're here to support you. And I 1000% believe that in less than 10 years, we'll have the technology so that we can all prove that we can constantly and consistently speak to our ancestors. They're an energy. They're always with us. They live in our DNA as emotions, and we can always connect with them. There are many women in my community that have, because of they healed, have now learned to honor their spiritual gifts. Or before they were afraid of them and they couldn't connect with the spiritual world because they were told not to. And now they're doing that in a very powerful way. That's what happens when you heal. So that's what the ancestors were telling me this week. We're back. Now everyone's going to feel our presence. And I love it. And that's what the reading really reminds me of, this 3-card reading that I want to share with you today. So in the immediate past, we have the Wheel of Fortune. Now, the Wheel of Fortune is reversed in this situation. The Wheel of Fortune represents cycles. And that's, again, when you have a healed, neutral mind through meditation, when you can train your mind and not be a slave through it, you don't judge good or bad. You don't get you don't allow the ego, which is your programming identity, to get arrogant because it feels it's better than someone else, or also to feel less than and idolize other people. So the Wheel of Fortune is about understanding that life is a cycle. The generational healing journey is a cycle. Everything is a cycle. Nature is in cycle. Even your menstrual cycle, your moon cycle, all of it is a cycle. And you have to have a neutral mind and a regulated nervous system to understand what cycle you're in. Like for a business, for example, like a business that just opened a week ago is not going to have the same goals or is not going to be in the same cycle as one that has been around for 50 years. So you can't have the same expectations, right? So you have to trust the cycle and know what cycle you're in. Now, reverse, this feels like we came from a period with a bunch of delays, a bunch of stagnation, lots of unexpected challenges, maybe even rock bottom for some of us, for some of you, for some of all of us, where it was necessary to see what no longer serves us, where this phase was concluding a very important introspective phase of growing from within. So basically, we were in this cycle or in this period of our lives where we were being forced to surrender and to trust in life cycles, even the painful one, knowing that it was part of our spiritual evolution. So we're being encouraged here in the immediate past to look at the world and see the miracles in everyday life, to transform the valuable in our life into the priceless. We were learning how to find joy between the fear and love of being a human being. I really feel that this is the energy of the Pisces full moon eclipse that we just closed. And because we did this, because we hit that rock bottom, that dark night of the soul, realized what no longer serves us, understood that this was just a cycle, now the energy of the present is so beautiful. It's literally of the ancestors, the 10 of Cups. Do you see this family with flower petals? Those are bougainvilleas falling from the sky. This is the ancestors literally showering you with support. You're entering now, because of this, into a period of emotional contentment, of happiness, of fulfillment, especially when it has to do with relationships and family. This represents the manifestation of abundant love, of peace, of harmony in our lives. And it does suggest that right now you are surrounded by loved ones with whom you share deep, powerful connections, providing mutual support and inspiration. This might also be because you found your spiritual community. Sometimes healing is, I need to set boundaries where I cannot be around this particular family member. But that's what the whole Age of Aquarius is about. Find your community, find your tribe. And it looks like you have, or you're on the path of doing that. If you're part of this movement, welcome. Because this is all about a period of wholeness, alignment, completion, time of appreciating the blessings that we've cultivated, especially through our connection with others. So we're being encouraged to follow our heart, our intuition, to trust the guidance, the ancestors, to really understand that their support is here. And they're here not only to assist you, but to protect you and your lineage. Why? Because of your own personal recognition of the lessons and the lessons of the Christ consciousness, unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness. This was a major spiritual awakening that you went through. And now it's time for you to harvest. Remember, I said, Pluto direct. If you've been doing this inner work, it's time for you to harvest. The meek have risen, and that's you. Now, in the immediate future, the card that we get is the Page of Wands upright. And I love this for us because this card is all about new beginnings, of enthusiasm, of curiosity, and uncoiled potential. This is like a youthful spirit that's ready to just explore, to learn, to embrace new opportunities, especially as it has to do with spiritual pursuits. So this is a phase now in the immediate future where growth can be found in unexpected places. You're being urged to see the potential in every situation and to reflect on a willingness to take bold steps, to take the plunge, to jump without the need even for a clear plan, trusting God, trusting your journey and the excitement of discovery. So this is us embarking on a spiritual path, some kind of creative endeavor, a new project that stirs our soul awake with openness to explore a new level of consciousness. This is a call for action to build a legacy and move towards spiritual and personal growth, to stop being afraid of dreaming big and pursuing your visions with unbridled passion, free from the weight of practical concerns. Amazing energy following us, of course, this legacy that we've worked on because of the inner work. So this week, it's so important for us to really, really align with our heart, to lean on ancestral support, and to embark on the fresh opportunities that are presenting themselves with boldness, with passion, with excitement, with trust, and with sovereignty. And this is going to be crucial because, like I said, next week brings forth a very potent full moon in Aries that's going to really level us up. That's going to be your glow up. Aries is about identity and your truth. So what I would say for this week, it's very important for you to really learn to become more still. Those moments of reflection, of meditation are key because the brain does not create consciousness, it downloads consciousness. And if you're not still, you're not using these times for meditation and inner work, you're going to miss the message and you're going to repeat the pattern. It's also very important to embrace the flow of these cycles, to remind yourself, hey, that's what the Wheel of Fortune taught me. Everything is a cycle, whether I'm on the up cycle, where I consider it to be a good cycle, or whether I'm at the low cycle where I consider it to be bad. It's all serving a purpose. And what I need to do is make sure my nervous system is regulated. I have prana running through my system. We're working on the pranic body this month and Satori, vitality, and spirituality in my community. That's the inner work. That's what's going to help you thrive. And the last thing that I'll say, and I'll repeat this again, is that you have a lot of support right now. Throughout these transits, your ancestors have your back. They're guiding you. They're protecting you as you move forward. As we get closer to the end of October, we're going to do a special Dia de los Muertos episode where we're going to talk about ritual, how to connect with your ancestors, and why they're always here. So it's very important to right now trust in the presence of your ancestors, trust in the presence of your spiritual guides, trust in the presence of the Holy Spirit, of Jesus Christ, of whoever guides you, especially right now during these times of uncertainty, so that we can lean on their wisdom. Everything you ever wanted to know, all that knowledge is already inside of you. If you don't access it, you're not going to be able to break these old cycles and step into these new empowered ones. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this week in the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast. It's been an honor to share this week's astrology update, ancestral tarot guidance, and of course, Elvira and I, thank you so much for joining us for this week's topic on clearing the cycle of toxic masculinity. Again, if this is an episode that resonated with you, if you have grown from this, we appreciate you sharing it, liking it, subscribing, hitting that notification bell so you get notified when we do publish a new episode. Expect a brand new episode every week. So make sure you're tuning in. And also feel free to leave any comments or questions below here in the description. Together, we are creating a movement of women like you and me, breaking the cycles at the level of the DNA. And for that, we thank you. We'll see you all next week. Sat Nam and be blessed.